Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. It's February 1st, 2025, and we've got a ton of current affairs to get through today to boost your UPSC prep.
Absolutely. We're going to be going from the ocean to the economy and maybe even touch a bit of space.
Okay, well, let's get right into it then. Two Indian Navy officers just crossed Point Nemo.
Oh, wow.
I have to admit, I'm a little shaky on my geography. Could you remind me where exactly that is?
So Point Nemo is kind of like, if you want to get away from it all, it's the place to go.
Yep.
The oceanic pole of inaccessibility, farthest point in the ocean from any land.
Okay.
Talking over 2,500 kilometers from the nearest island.
Wow.
It's so isolated, the closest humans are often the astronauts on the International Space Station.
That's wild. I also read that it's called the spacecraft graveyard.
Yeah, that's right. When satellites and other space debris reach the end of their life, they're often deliberately crashed in this area. Minimizes the risk of, debris falling on populated areas.
Right.
It makes sense. Kind of eerie, but
Good.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, definitely a lot to think about when we think about space exploration and the impact it has.
You're right.
Okay, let's move on to a topic that's a little closer to home. World Leprosy Day just passed, which got me thinking about this disease. It seems like there's still a lot of stigma around it.
Yeah, it's true. And, it's important to remember that leprosy or Hansen's disease is a chronic infection, but it's curable
Okay.
with multi-drug therapy. But sadly, there are a lot of misconceptions about leprosy which contribute to the social stigma.
Yeah, for instance, I think a lot of people still think it's very contagious.
Yeah, not true. Transmission actually requires prolonged close contact.
Interesting.
So this is where public health kind of intersects with social issues.
Right.
Understanding the disease, dispelling myths, and addressing the stigma are all crucial, not just medically, but also from a societal perspective.
Yeah.
Something to think about for UPSC aspirants.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so Guantanamo Bay has been in the news lately,
Yeah,
and not for the reasons you might think.
right. U.S. is planning to establish a large-scale migrant detention center there. And it's interesting, the Bay holds significant strategic importance geographically,
Okay.
near the Windward Passage.
Uh-huh.
Critical shipping route, connects the Atlantic and Caribbean Sea.
So it's important to clarify, this isn't about the detention center we usually think of,
Right.
with the terrorism suspects.
Yeah, exactly. Separate facility.
We're talking about the migrant facility.
Historically used for migrants, yeah, they're going to expand it.
I see, I see. So this brings up questions like, what does this mean for U.S. immigration policy, international relations,
Yeah.
human rights?
All important for
Oh.
UPSC prep.
Definitely, lots to consider. Okay, shifting continents here. There's some good news coming out of Africa.
Okay.
Guinea has been declared free of a certain form of human African trypanosomiasis.
Yes.
Now, before we get into why this is a big deal, I have to admit, I don't really know what HAT is.
Sure. HAT, it's also called sleeping sickness. It's a parasitic disease spread through the bite of the tsetse fly, endemic to sub-Saharan Africa. And actually, there are two forms of HAT.
Okay,
One is chronic, the other is acute.
got it.
And the geographical distribution, it's actually linked to the different types of tsetse flies. So African geography comes in handy here.
Interesting. So why is it such a big deal that Guinea has eliminated this form?
Well, it highlights the success of global health initiatives in tackling neglected tropical diseases. 7 countries have now eliminated one form of HAT.
Wow.
So it's a testament to what can be achieved with sustained effort and international cooperation.
Yeah. Okay, let's bring it back to India. I know a lot of people studying for the economics portion of the UPSC exam are interested in the recent findings from the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey.
Right.
This offers some valuable insights into economic well-being of the population.
Absolutely. It helps track trends in poverty, inequality, and overall consumption patterns. Some of the key findings include a declining urban-rural consumption gap and its impact on the Gini coefficient.
Right, and the UPSC loves to test your ability to analyze and interpret data like this.
Of course.
So it's really important to not just understand the trends, but also what's causing them. What could be contributing to this shrinking consumption gap? How does it affect different demographics?
All good questions.
Definitely. Now, there's this development in India that's creating some buzz. Himachal Pradesh is doing a pilot study for the controlled cultivation of cannabis.
Interesting.
Now, before anyone jumps to conclusions, this is strictly for medicinal and industrial purposes.
Right.
This is focusing on low THC hemp varieties,
Okay.
which have minimal psychoactive properties.
Right.
So this ties into a lot of UPSC-relevant themes, like the ongoing debates around drug policy in India. We have NDPS Act at the central level, and then we have states like Himachal Pradesh kind of exploring alternative approaches.
Yeah, interesting example of how policy can vary across states.
Definitely. And it kind of challenges our assumptions about cannabis, right? We tend to think of it in terms of recreational use. But here we see these other potential applications. In medicine, in industry. Makes you think about the potential benefits and risks, and how we can approach these issues with a balanced perspective.
For sure.
Okay, well, speaking of pushing boundaries, we have an Indian Air Force officer headed to the International Space Station as part of the Axiom 4 mission.
Wow, that's amazing. A remarkable achievement for India's space program. This is the fourth mission by Axiom Space, private company collaborating with NASA to send astronauts to the ISS.
And there are so many reasons why this mission is significant. It involves scientific research, technology demonstrations, educational outreach, and an international crew. It really shows India's growing presence in space exploration and commitment to global cooperation.
Definitely themes that are important for the UPSC. And speaking of agencies involved in investigations, the Enforcement Directorate, or ED, is investigating financial irregularities in Kerala's cooperative banks. They're using something called an ECIR in this case.
On ECI.
Yeah.
For those of us who aren't lawyers, what is that?
Yeah. ECIR Enforcement Case Information Report. A crucial tool for the ED when it comes to investigating financial crimes like money laundering. Think of it as the starting point for their investigation. Similar to an FIR filed by the police, but there are some key differences between an ECIR and an FIR,
Okay.
making it a distinct legal instrument.
So UPSC aspirants need to know about the role of the ED, the processes involved, and the tools they use, like the ECIR. And there's also this debate surrounding the transparency of ECRs, balancing the need for investigations with the right to information.
A complex issue for sure.
It is. Okay, so let's talk about two new initiatives that aim to empower India's unorganized workers, the e-Shram microsite and the Occupational Shortage Index.
Right.
The e-Shram portal has been really helpful in giving these workers access to benefits.
Yeah.
This new microsite seems to be taking things a step further.
It is. The e-Shram microsite is like a one-stop shop for all their needs. Streamlines access to both state and central welfare schemes, provides real-time updates, and is available in multiple languages to make sure everyone can use it.
That's great. It's a great example of using technology to help people,
Yeah.
especially people who might not have other ways to get this information.
Right.
And then we have the Occupational Shortage Index. This sounds like a great idea to fix the skills gap. What can you tell us about it?
Sure. The Occupational Shortage Index provides data-driven insights into which jobs are in high demand but facing a shortage of skilled workers. This information is critical for workforce planning, policymaking, and ensuring that skill development programs are aligned with actual market needs. It's about connecting job seekers with the right opportunities and equipping them with the skills that are in demand.
It seems like a much more proactive approach to fighting unemployment.
It is.
Okay, so last topic for this part. Let's talk about graphics processing units, or GPUs.
Okay.
We usually think of those with gaming, but
Yeah.
they're used in lots of other things too, right?
Yeah, so while they're great for gaming, they're also important for AI, high-performance computing, and lots of scientific applications. They're different from CPUs because they can handle a ton of data at the same time, which is important for things like training AI models.
So like if a CPU is running a marathon, a GPU is like a team of sprinters.
Exactly, and that's why 6 Indian companies are using them to develop their own AI models. It's a sign that India is serious about being a leader in AI.
It's great to see Indian companies at the forefront of tech, but we have to think about the ethical side of things too, right?
Right. As future policymakers, you need to think about how AI will affect society and how to make sure it's used responsibly. These are the questions that will shape the future of our country.
A lot to think about.
And we're back for part 2 of this deep dive, getting you ready for the UPSC exam.
It's so interesting how all these different topics connect back to things that are important for the UPSC.
It really shows how everything is connected.
It does. Okay, so we were talking about GPUs and India's push into AI. Are there any worries about how fast this technology is growing?
That's a really important question, and it's something UPSC examiners often focus on. AI has a lot of potential, but we have to think about the ethical side of things, like what if algorithms are biased? That could make existing inequalities even worse. And then there's the question of jobs. AI could automate some jobs and people could lose their livelihoods.
It's like technology is great, but it's not enough to just have it. You have to use it well.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about something that's really important for anyone interested in economics and social development.
Okay.
The Household Consumption Expenditure Survey.
Oh, yeah, that survey. It's got so much information about how people are doing economically, consumption patterns, poverty levels, how income is distributed. It's all in there.
And it's super important for the UPSC.
Absolutely. UPSC aspirants need to know this stuff because it's often the basis for questions about economic planning and social welfare.
So it's not just about knowing the big trends. You have to be able to dig into the details. Like, how does consumption differ between rich and poor?
Exactly.
What do these trends mean for policies that try to reduce poverty?
You've got to go deeper. Why are these trends happening? What can we do about it?
Right.
And are there any problems with the data itself?
Yeah, good point. That kind of critical thinking is what the UPSC is looking for.
Absolutely.
Speaking of connecting the dots, let's talk about a story that's getting a lot of attention.
Okay.
An Indian Air Force officer is going to the International Space Station, part of the Axiom 4 mission.
Wow, that's huge for India.
It is.
It shows how important India is becoming in space.
Definitely. And it's not just about sending someone to space.
Right.
Axiom 4 has all these experiments and technology demonstrations.
That could change how we think about space and even help us back here on Earth.
Exactly. Like the research on how spaceflight affects the body.
Oh, yeah, that's important for future missions to the moon and Mars.
And beyond.
And they're also developing new technologies.
Like what kinds of things?
Materials, life support systems, things like that.
So space exploration isn't just about reaching for the stars. It's about learning and making things better for everyone.
It is.
Okay, let's talk about something a little more controversial.
Okay.
Himachal Pradesh is going to do a pilot study on cannabis cultivation.
Wow, that's a complicated issue.
It is. Public health, social policy, economic development, legal stuff, it all comes into play.
We need to be careful and understand all sides of this.
Right, and this is where your UPSC prep really helps. You have to be able to analyze this from different angles.
Right.
What are the pros and cons? Could it help the economy by creating jobs and bringing in money? How do we stop people from misusing it?
It's a perfect example of how to deal with a tough policy issue.
Exactly. Think like a policymaker. What would you consider when making a decision about this?
It's a great way to practice those analytical skills.
Okay, let's shift gears to something that affects international relations and global security. Guantanamo Bay is back in the news. And it's not about the terrorism detention center.
Oh, right.
The U.S. is going to build a big facility for migrants there.
This is going to be controversial.
It is.
We have to remember that Guantanamo Bay is really important strategically.
Right.
It's near the Windward Passage.
Uh-huh.
That's a key route for ships going between the Atlantic and the Caribbean. So that makes this even more complicated.
So many questions. Why are they doing this? What does it mean for U.S. foreign policy? What about the human rights of the migrants?
It's a big issue that involves law, ethics, and humanitarian principles.
And for those studying for the UPSC, it shows that international relations are never simple.
That's for sure.
You have to understand things from different points of view, the history, the geopolitics, and how people are affected.
You have to see the big picture.
Right. Okay, let's talk about something more positive.
Okay.
Guinea just eliminated one form of human African trypanosomiasis. That's also called sleeping sickness.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic news. Public health efforts really can make a difference.
It's a huge win.
It is. Remember, HAT is spread by tsetse flies, and it's been a big problem in Africa. For Guinea to eliminate it, along with 6 other countries, is a big step forward.
It's a reason to celebrate for sure.
It is.
But we should also understand how they did it. What strategies did they use? Did international collaboration help? Are there any lessons we can learn and use for other health problems?
Those are all great questions. It shows that a multi-pronged approach is important for tackling health issues.
Not just medical solutions.
Right. We also need to think about things like poverty, education, and infrastructure. They all affect health.
It's about seeing how everything is connected.
Exactly.
This case study is really helpful for UPSC aspirants because it shows the ups and downs of global health work.
It does. It shows that progress is possible, but it takes time and effort and everyone working together.
So hopeful, but also a reminder to keep working. Okay, let's move on to a story closer to home. The Enforcement Directorate, or ED, is looking into financial problems in careless cooperative banks. And they're using something called an ECIR.
Okay.
What's that?
ECIR Enforcement Case Information Report. It's how the ED starts an investigation into financial crimes,
Okay.
like money laundering. It's kind of like an FIR from the police, but it's different in some important ways. For example, the ED doesn't need a formal complaint to start investigating.
So they have a lot of power to go after financial crimes.
They do, but that raises questions about transparency. How do we know they're using their power correctly?
Good point.
Some people want more transparency and oversight to prevent abuse. It's a complicated issue that involves basic legal rights.
So for those preparing for the UPSC, this case shows how important it is to understand the law,
It does.
the procedures, and the ethics of investigations. Okay, let's finish this part with two new initiatives for India's unorganized workers,
Okay.
the e-Shram microsite and the Occupational Shortage Index.
These are great steps to help these workers who often struggle to get government benefits and find decent jobs.
So the e-Shram portal has been great.
It has.
This new microsite seems even better.
It is. It's like a one-stop shop for all their needs. Real-time updates on government schemes, support in multiple languages, and easy registration.
It's a good example of using technology to help those who need it most.
It really is.
And then there's the Occupational Shortage Index.
It uses data to show which jobs are in high demand but don't have enough skilled workers. This helps connect job seekers with the right opportunities and make sure training programs teach the skills people need.
So it's a way to fight unemployment with information.
That's right.
And it helps policymakers make better decisions.
Exactly. We need to use data to make sure our decisions are based on evidence.
It's a reminder that data can make things fairer for everyone.
It can.
It's amazing how this all connects together. From workers to global issues, it's all about how the world works.
It is, and that's what makes preparing for the UPSC so interesting. It's not just about memorizing facts. It's about understanding the bigger picture.
Exactly. Okay, let's talk about a technology that's becoming more and more important. In science, AI, everywhere, really. GPUs.
Graphics processing unit.
Right. We think of them for gaming, but they can do so much more.
Oh yeah, way more than just gaming. They're crucial for things like AI research, high-performance computing, even medicine.
So what makes them different from the CPUs we use every day?
It's how they process information. A CPU is like a really good chef who makes one amazing dish at a time. It's perfect for tasks that need to be done in order. But a GPU is like a whole team of cooks, all working on different parts of the meal at the same time.
Okay, I see.
That's parallel processing, and it's why GPUs are so good at handling huge amounts of data, like when you're training AI.
So CPUs are good for everyday stuff, and GPUs are the heavy lifters for big data.
Exactly. That's why they're essential for AI. Speaking of which, 6 Indian companies are using GPUs to develop their own AI models.
That's great to hear. India is really stepping up in the AI world.
It is.
But we have to be careful with such powerful technology, right?
Of course, UPSC aspirants need to think about this. Things like bias in algorithms, misuse, and the impact on jobs. We need to find a balance between the good AI can do and the risks that come with it.
It's like a reminder that progress has to be ethical.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's deep dive.
It does.
I always feel like I learned so much from these conversations.
Me too. It's always interesting to explore these connections and understand what's really going on.
And for everyone getting ready for the UPSC, remember it's not just about the facts. It's about thinking critically, connecting the dots, and seeing how everything fits together.
We hope this has helped you do just that.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and good luck on your UPSC journey.